Hey guys, I'm Andrea. I'm going to be reviewing Barbara Ehrenreich's Bright-Sided, How Positive Thinking is Undermining America. I'm just going to give a brief summary really quick, although her title really explains it all. Ehrenreich is not worried solely on the individual and positive thinking for individuals. She's more concerned with the movement as a whole and the amount of people that are joining the movement. Throughout her book, she gives examples of different groups of people that are participating, ranging from breast cancer patients and survivors to the everyday business individual. Ehrenreich even goes all the way back to the start of the positive thinking, the Calvinistic beliefs that sparked the positive thinking movement. Ehrenreich goes deep into her thoughts, providing example after example after example that all support her main idea, which she throws at us at the end of the introduction on pages 12 and 13. She states, "I did not write this in a spirit of sourness or personal disappointment of any kind, nor do I have any romantic attachment to suffering as a source of insight or virtue. We need to brace ourselves for our struggle against terrifying obstacles, both of our own making and imposed by the natural world. And the first step is to recover from the mass delusion that is positive thinking." Okay, so Ehrenreich does provide specific examples of what she believed caused the undermining of today's society. However, some of her examples start to get a little repetitive, and quite honestly, they just really lose me. I believe that she starts very strong with her own personal example of surviving breast cancer. She gives specific examples about how cancer patients can't think negatively or they won't be cured. She also goes on to talk about an article entitled Get Well Again, which explains how an attitude adjustment is just what a patient needs because attitude is just as important as taking medication. Now, I see where she's coming from at this point, where she believes just wanting something isn't magically going to make it happen. Obviously, medication is needed to help patients recover. On page 39, she states, "Furthermore, no one has found a way to cure cancer by boosting the immune system with chemical or biological agents," explaining that no cure has been found for cancer. Therefore, it's incorrect for people to be telling other cancer patients that they must have a positive attitude or they will not survive. By proving this point and providing her own experience, her argument becomes stronger. She has lived through these experiences and experienced these comments about staying positive firsthand. So after reading her first chapter, I'm thinking, okay, I really like this book. I agree so far. She knows what she's talking about since she's gone through it all. She's made a valid point with solid evidence. But soon after this, she kind of starts to lose me. Like, if you skip to the third chapter, when she starts to describe the history of positive thinking, jumping from breast cancer directly into the past just threw me off from the beginning of the chapter. I don't think this organization was really well thought out. Anyway, she explains exactly where it originated, going back to the Calvinistic beliefs that many Americans shared. She talks about how people started to worry about the thought of being damned, and it really started to haunt them, so they decided to get rid of those thoughts completely. This started out as a very good example, but then she started to throw in a lot of extra information that was really not needed. It started to get really dry, and it seemed as though she was only dragging out the chapter to attempt to make her point stronger. Meanwhile, I was just weakening it the whole time. She starts naming so many people that everything started to get confusing, like 3 different relatives of Harriet Beecher Stowe, and all of the names of the people they had done research on and information about all of them. Honestly, why did I need to know about all these people? What was the significance of throwing in all those randoms? I had to reread so many of the pages just to comprehend it because it wasn't processing. As I was reading this, I did not feel as though the chapter related back to what she was trying to say from the beginning. Her connections did not align at all. She was trying to go from one point to the next. To me, this chapter was honestly the turning point, which is only chapter 3, where I was really like, I'm ready to be done. But, of course, I wasn't done, and I kept going, so I got to chapter 4, where she actually grabs my attention again. I can relate to this chapter because I'm a business major, and it starts to describe the life of the everyday businessman, or woman. As she goes on to describe the effects of positive thinking in the business world, she describes many instances in which greed comes into play, which is very true. Many people are happy because they are rich, not just rich because they are happy, which is many state that they are. Although I am not fully involved in business yet, I discuss relative topics like this weekly in my classes. Many people in business could relate to this chapter because of how she depicts the average successful business individual to be, which is greedy. I'm sure anybody involved in the business world can say that they have heard or met at least one person full of themselves. But then she attempts to make another point, that positive thinking helped many people who were laid off during the recession. Many people who were laid off then, or are currently laid off, are not happy people. She uses an example from a book called Who Moved My Cheese, implying that people only move on and scamper onto the next job because they are starting to think positively. Well, I can honestly tell you, my mom was laid off during the recession, and I can tell you that she was not happy, nor did she find a new job because she was happy. She found a new job to support her family, and she was definitely a little more worrisome than thinking positively. To use a few examples to represent the entire business world, I don't think is really fair. I think her point started out strong that business people tend to be optimistic and greedy, but attempting to tie in the unemployed doesn't really work well because not every business treats their unemployed as the one she talks about. She did not have enough evidence for this chapter, making it seem like the last, where she just starts adding information to drag out her point. The connection she attempts to make between positive thinking and laid-off employees is not there. It was just really too far of a reach. So, kind of by this point, I'm like, alright, I'm ready for this book to be over. Like, are we almost there? So, towards the end of the book, she basically just explains how she believes that all of her examples connect and eventually crashed our economy. She believes that the latest financial crisis was all thanks to optimistic financiers who didn't want to believe that anything bad could happen to their company. Angela Mazzillo, Countrywide Mortgage's CEO, was found to be upbeat and happy as his stocks were plummeting. Ehrenreich finds a quote by a finance professor from Columbia Business School stating that he lived in a world where there had been no defaults for so long that he didn't believe that they could happen. I don't know if I can 100% agree with her about the most recent recession. Although some of the market crash could have possibly been from optimistic beliefs, I don't think the entire recession can be blamed on this. She's going out on that limb again, and as I was reading, I just really didn't feel the connection between her thoughts and her evidence. Ehrenreich's purpose is to inform the reader about the mass delusion that is positive thinking by providing real-world examples that relate to all types of people. Overall, she tried to do that. Her range of examples helps her a little bit because she can reach out to so many different people, but it also ended up hurting her. Very, very few people are interested in every single example that she provided, which causes her to lose interest very quickly and can damage her overall standing about her book. Providing example after example after example is just overdue. Too many nonfiction books follow that same format, and to me it's just getting really old. I think her argument started out strong and her points were valid, but they weren't strong enough to put into a solid book. She loses her readers too quickly and too often. Her points were valid, but the support was weak, coming to the conclusion that I would not recommend the book for anyone else to read.